After Rebirth, ex-pregnant wife changed drastically. Billionaire falls for her all over again. When billionaire magnate Christian Rothschild received a phone call he thought would change his future forever, it was already too late. His ex-wife, the gentle and unassuming Victoria Tory Sinclair, had been in a devastating accident. The world believed she wouldn't make it, and Christian's guilt weighed heavier than his fortune. Yet what he never expected was her sudden, miraculous recovery, and an even more astonishing transformation of spirit. Gone was the timid woman whose heart he once broke, replaced by a magnetic force of confidence and grace. Little did Christian know this reborn Tory would enthrall him like never before, rekindling a love he thought he'd lost. Christian Rothschild was synonymous with power and wealth. At 32, he presided over his multi-billion-dollar conglomerate, Rothschild Industries, with an iron will that belied his immaculately tailored suits. His name was constantly in the tabloids, from lavish yacht parties off the coast of Mykonos to philanthropic galas at the Metropolitan Museum of Art. Yet behind the glitz lay a man disillusioned with the illusions of high society. Victoria Tory Sinclair, on the other hand, had always been the humble one. Raised in a modest brownstone in Brooklyn, she carried a quiet grace that stood out against Christian's ostentatious world. Her dream was not to conquer boardrooms, but to nurture a warm household filled with laughter and sincerity. When Christian first met Tory at a charity dinner, he was struck by how genuine her smile was amid a sea of forced grins and social climbing gazes. Their courtship was swift, an unlikely pairing of a billionaire scion and a hard-working literature major who volunteered at soup kitchens. Christian's mother, Alexandra Rothschild, initially disapproved, deeming Tory too ordinary for her legacy-obsessed family. Christian, however, was enthralled by Tory's groundedness, her compassionate view of the world. Before long, they were married in a small ceremony at a centuries-old chapel in upstate New York, a far cry from the grand wedding the Rothschild clan had planned. But love stories, as fairy tale as they start, can unravel under the weight of reality. While Christian jetted across continents to oversee expansions and acquisitions, Tory was often left behind, lonely in a penthouse overlooking Central Park. She tried to occupy herself. She took baking classes, visited orphans on weekends, even considered adopting a dog to keep her company. None of it filled the void left by her absent husband, who was too consumed by corporate wars and the endless pursuit of more. Adding to the strain, Christian's mother never missed an opportunity to remind Tory of her supposed shortcomings. During family dinners in their palatial estate on Long Island, Alexandra would belittle her choice of conversation topics, her outfits, even her table manners. Tory tried to hold her tongue out of respect, but each barb dug deeper into her self-esteem. The final straw came on a night forever etched in Tory's memory. In front of dozens of influential investors at a high-stakes business soiree, Christian, exasperated by Tory's timid discomfort, publicly snapped at her. He accused her of embarrassing him in front of potential partners. The humiliation was swift and public. Tory left the event in tears, feeling more alone than ever in a marriage that once felt like destiny. Within a month, the divorce papers were filed. Tory had no fight left in her. She signed them almost mechanically. Christian left the negotiations to his high-powered legal team. Although the settlement was generous, it felt cold, like an unspoken admission that money could fix a broken heart. Tory simply wanted her freedom from the harsh judgments and perpetual loneliness. They parted ways with no final goodbye. Christian drowned his regret in business expansions, burying himself in 12-hour workdays. Tory quietly moved into a friend's empty apartment in Queens, resolving to find her own path. Neither suspected that their fates would collide again, under circumstances neither could have foreseen. 6 months after the divorce, Tory Sinclair found a humble job at Whitaker Grace Public Library. It wasn't glamorous, but she loved being around books and the solace they provided. Her co-worker, Elizabeth Graham was a retired school teacher who spent her days cataloguing ancient manuscripts and gossiping about the regular patrons. She took a liking to Tori, her kind eyes crinkling with curiosity whenever Tori mentioned her former life. Tori rarely spoke about Christian. The mention of his name brought a tightness to her chest, a reminder of everything she had once hoped for but never received. Instead, she kept herself busy with library events, community outreach programs, and reorganizing the dusty archives. Life was simple, though loneliness still lurked in the corners of her existence. Her nights were filled with the hum of an old fan in her cramped studio apartment. She sometimes gazed out the window at the Manhattan skyline, where Christian likely sipped expensive whiskey in his penthouse. If regret was a tangible thing, Tori felt it pressing heavily on her every evening. One particular morning, a regular patron named Kenneth Moore approached the circulation desk. He was a middle-aged historian researching the Rothschild family for an upcoming biography. Pulling out an old newspaper clipping, he placed it in front of Tori. "I need more information on the Rothschild family's philanthropic events," he said, tapping a photograph that captured Christian and Tori smiling hand-in-hand at a pediatric hospital fundraiser. Tori's heart lurched at the sight. Her hair was pinned back in a loose bun, her face radiant with the warmth she felt around Christian in those early days. She quickly composed herself, offered Kenneth a polite smile, and guided him to the relevant section of archives. But for the rest of the day, she couldn't shake the memory of that photograph, the fleeting evidence that once upon a time she and Christian had been truly happy. It was in that fog of nostalgia that fate took a dark turn. Later that evening, after the library closed, Tori headed to the grocery store. Rain pounded the pavement, and thunder rumbled overhead. She dashed across the slick street without noticing an oncoming sedan speeding to beat the traffic light. The collision was sudden, brutal. Tori felt her body slam against the hood before everything went black. Her last conscious thought was a detached realization: this is the end. Paramedics arrived within minutes, alerted by horrified onlookers. Among them was Elizabeth Graham, who had been leaving the library and witnessed the accident. She clutched Tori's purse, tears streaming down her face as EMTs tried to stabilize Tori's vitals. They rushed her to St. Jude's Hospital, where she was swiftly wheeled into emergency surgery. No one knew if she would survive. That same night, Christian was in Tokyo, finalizing a high-profile acquisition. His phone buzzed incessantly, but he ignored it at first, thinking it was just another business call. When he finally checked his messages, he found one from his head of security, who had been alerted by an acquaintance at the hospital. "Sir, Tori Sinclair has been in a major accident. Prognosis unclear." Christian froze, the bustling conference room seeming to blur around him. Memories of Tori's gentle face rushed back in a flood of regrets and unspoken apologies. Without a second thought, he cancelled the meeting, ordered his private jet, and headed straight for the airport, dread tightening in his chest. When Christian arrived at St. Jude's Hospital in the early hours, he found Tori in critical condition. A swirl of doctors and nurses hovered over her bed, hooking her up to machines that beeped ominously. Alexandra Rothschild, alerted by her son, stood in the hallway wearing a veneer of concern. "She's in God's hands now," Alexandra murmured quietly, though there was a flicker of discomfort in her eyes. Perhaps guilt, or maybe fear that her family's name would be dragged into scandal. Christian ignored her, stepping into Tori's room. His ex-wife was frail, bruises marking her delicate skin. He felt a pang of shame for not recognizing how precious she was when he had her. Kneeling by her bedside, he whispered the words he had never said before. "Tori, please pull through. I never wanted this to happen. I'm so sorry." For days, Tori hovered between life and death. The doctors warned Christian that her chances of waking were slim. Brain swelling, broken ribs, internal injuries. Her body had endured a catastrophic trauma. They recommended that Christian and any other family members prepare for the worst. But Christian refused to leave. He stationed himself at the hospital, ignoring board meetings and pressing calls from shareholders. He slept in a chair outside Tori's ICU room, living off cafeteria sandwiches and coffee. Elizabeth Graham visited daily, bringing small notes from the library staff, wishing Tori a speedy recovery. Even Alexandra Rothschild surprised everyone by showing up with floral arrangements, though her presence felt more obligatory than genuine. Late on the fourth day, as the hospital's night shift began, Tori's eyes fluttered open. A nurse, Jolene Peterson, noticed and rushed to her side. Tori's gaze was unfocused, her breathing labored, but she was awake. Jolene paged the doctors, who arrived within minutes. Christian, awakened by the commotion, bolted upright in his chair. He burst into the room to find Tori struggling to speak, a fragile rasp escaping her cracked lips. "Christian," she managed, her tone laced with confusion and disbelief. He rushed to her side, grasping her hand. Relief coursed through him like a tidal wave. "Tori, thank God," he breathed, tears pooling in his eyes. The medical team performed tests, scanning Tori's vitals, checking her neurological responses. Astonishingly, she seemed to have dodged the worst. While her road to recovery would be long, her cognitive functions and memory were largely intact. What nobody realized yet was that Tori's near-death experience had done something else, something intangible yet profound. Over the weeks that followed, Tori's physical healing progressed steadily, thanks to her youthful resilience and excellent medical care. But her emotional and psychological state revealed a startling transformation. The once timid Tori began speaking her mind with newfound clarity. She would meet Alexandra's cool stare and calmly but directly respond to her thinly veiled criticisms. She insisted on making her own decisions, whether about her physical therapy schedule or the type of visitors allowed in her hospital room. Gone was the submissive, shrinking flower Christian had once known. In her place was a woman whose eyes shone with self-assurance. Even the medical staff noticed. "She's quite the fighter," Nurse Jolene whispered to Christian one afternoon. "Almost lost her, but she's come back stronger than before, if you ask me." Christian was intrigued, initially chalking it up to relief or adrenaline. But as Tori's condition improved, the shift in her demeanor became undeniable. She refused to let him pay for certain hospital expenses, pointing out that she was no longer his responsibility. She even made suggestions about how to handle the press, who had begun to sniff around for a story about the billionaire's ex-wife returning from the brink of death. At first, Christian wasn't sure how to handle this new Tori. He found himself apologizing again for past wrongs, but Tori didn't want to dwell on what had happened before the accident. "That was a different life," she said softly. "I'm not that woman anymore. Let's just move forward, whatever that means." Christian felt both hopeful and uneasy. There was something magnetic about this rejuvenated version of Tori, a confidence that pulled him in. Her gentle compassion still existed, evident in the way she thanked every nurse and asked them about their families. But it was fused with a steely determination he couldn't quite recognize. During a routine checkup, Dr. Isaac Bernstein, one of the hospital's top neurosurgeons, had a private talk with Christian. "Medically, she's on a solid path to recovery," he explained, "but emotional or psychological changes can occur after significant trauma. Sometimes it's an epiphany or a renewed sense of purpose. Whatever is happening to Tori, it's not entirely unusual." Christian absorbed those words, reflecting on the many instances he had longed for Tori to stand up for herself, especially in front of his overbearing mother. Now that Tori was doing exactly that, a swirl of admiration stirred in his chest, along with regret that it had taken a near tragedy for him to see her true strength. Within 2 months, Tori moved from the hospital to a specialized rehabilitation center where she underwent rigorous physical therapy to regain her full range of motion. The injuries to her spine and legs demanded daily exercises, though the doctors assured her she would walk normally again in time. Christian insisted on paying for the best rehabilitation program available, but Tori put her foot down. She allowed him to cover the initial deposit. She wasn't foolish enough to reject help outright, but she made it clear that once she was strong enough, she intended to pay her own way. Christian surprisingly respected her stance, though it gnawed at him that he could do more. During rehab, Tori met a colourful cast of fellow patients. Sarah Lawson, a middle-aged woman recovering from a stroke, became Tori's confidant. They often bonded over cups of bland hospital coffee, exchanging life stories. Sarah had lost her job as an accountant due to her illness, and her husband had left her shortly thereafter. Tori, in turn, described her failed marriage with a billionaire who had once swept her off her feet. Sarah listened with wide-eyed fascination, making Tori laugh with jokes about trading up for a more decent millionaire if she had the chance. Meanwhile, Christian's visits became regular, almost daily. He would arrive early in the morning or late at night, depending on his meeting schedule, carrying gifts like books, fresh flowers, or home-cooked meals prepared by his personal chef. To Tori's surprise, Christian's presence felt less imposing now. He didn't try to overshadow her decisions. Instead, he offered assistance quietly, letting her take the lead. They fell into a peculiar rhythm. He'd update her on city news, philanthropic events he was hosting in her honor, to help cover medical costs for uninsured accident victims, and even gossip from the upper echelons of society. Tori would share stories from rehab, the achievements of her new friends, and her latest progress with therapy. Their conversations took on a warmth that hadn't existed before. More and more, Christian caught himself studying Tori's every expression, how her eyes lit up when she recounted Sarah's success in lifting a coffee mug unassisted, or the way she bit her lip in concentration during her own exercises. He realized, with a pang of nostalgia and fresh longing, that he was rediscovering the woman he had married, albeit in a more resilient, self-assured form. This new Tori was mesmerizing, but Tori's independence was unwavering. When Christian proposed she move into a private recovery suite in his penthouse, she flatly refused. "I need to do this on my own," she said firmly, leaning on her walker for support. "And I need space to figure out who I am now." He nodded, accepting her decision. Yet every time Tori turned to leave, Christian's chest constricted, fearful of losing this second chance, whatever it was shaping up to be. On a crisp autumn morning, Tori accomplished a milestone. She took her first steps without crutches. The rehab staff cheered, and Christian, who had arrived just in time, clapped along with them. Tears welled in Tori's eyes. The victory was hers, and hers alone. But something in her heart whispered that perhaps having Christian there didn't detract from her independence. It just added a layer of support she'd never had before. That evening, Sarah and Tori celebrated with a small graduation party in the rehab center's lounge. Christian attended briefly, bringing a custom cake shaped like a pair of walking shoes. Everyone laughed at the whimsical design, but Tori couldn't ignore the sincerity in Christian's eyes when he told her, "I'm proud of you." Much to her own surprise, she felt a twinge of appreciation, even happiness. The tension that once defined their relationship was dissipating, replaced by cautious optimism. As Sarah teased her about the billionaire's clear adoration, Tori felt her cheeks grow warm. Still, she reminded herself to stay grounded. Past wounds might have scabbed over, but scars often linger. As Tori regained her mobility, she grew restless. She wanted to return to work, to the library where she had found some semblance of peace after the divorce, yet she also felt an undercurrent of anxiety. Would the old Tori appear when she stepped back into that environment? The one who felt small and insignificant, overshadowed by Christian's colossal presence in her life. Curiously, the library seemed like a different world upon her return. Elizabeth Graham welcomed her with open arms, a grateful tear in her eye. "We didn't think we'd see you back so soon," she exclaimed, hugging Tori gently. The entire staff had signed a giant welcome back card, plastered with well wishes and inside jokes. Tori's heart fluttered with gratitude. She was touched that her modest circle of co-workers cared so deeply. Yet Tori could sense a subtle shift within herself. She no longer felt the need to shrink into the background. When she noticed outdated organizational systems that slowed down the checkout process, she proposed reforms to the library's board of directors. The old Tori might have hesitated, afraid to rock the boat. This Tori presented her ideas with clarity and confidence, winning respect from her superiors. The library soon implemented her plans, and the foot traffic increased. Meanwhile, Christian's public image had undergone a transformation as well. By constantly visiting Tori and funding philanthropic programs for accident victims, he garnered praise from the media. Yet behind the polished PR spin, Christian's motivations were deeply personal. He was atoning for his neglect, for the humiliations Tori had endured, and in ways he couldn't fully articulate, he was trying to win back her heart. At first, Tori found his renewed attention confusing. She had steeled herself against him, determined to maintain emotional autonomy. But Christian's gestures felt genuine, lacking the arrogance she once associated with him. He arranged for library donors to sponsor new children's reading programs and never asked for a shred of public credit. When Tori confronted him about it, curious why he didn't want his name on the plaques, Christian simply replied, "This isn't about me." Encounters between them became more frequent. Tori would finish her library shift to find Christian waiting outside, leaning against his sleek black car. "Need a ride?" he'd ask. She declined half the time, preferring the subway, but occasionally accepted, especially on rainy days. They filled the journeys with light chatter, updates on each other's days, sometimes even comfortable silences. One evening, Tori agreed to meet Christian for a quiet dinner at an upscale but cozy Italian bistro in Brooklyn. She chose the place, Pietro's Trattoria, away from the prying eyes of Manhattan's paparazzi. Red-checkered tablecloths and the aroma of freshly baked bread greeted them. Over plates of fettuccine alfredo, they navigated the awkward territory of discussing their past. Christian apologized again for his temper, for allowing his mother's disapproval to corrode Tori's sense of self-worth, and for prioritizing business over their marriage. Tori listened, noting the raw sincerity in his voice. "I wish I could have protected you," he said, swirling the wine in his glass. "I wish I had recognized that you deserved more than just being an accessory to my life." Tori's eyes glistened. "You can't change the past," she murmured, "and I can't pretend it didn't happen, but I'm learning to forgive what I can't forget." They walked out into the crisp night air, the Brooklyn Bridge visible in the distance. Christian gently offered his arm for support, which Tori accepted without hesitation. The warmth of that small gesture lingered between them. Yet, in the back of Tori's mind, a warning bell chimed. She had been through a rebirth, physically and emotionally. But if she allowed Christian back into her heart too quickly, would she be abandoning the independence she fought so hard to claim? She resolved to move cautiously, mindful that genuine change takes more than fleeting moments of sincerity. No matter how much Tori and Christian tried to keep their reunion private, word inevitably leaked into the social sphere. A close source tipped off a gossip columnist at the Daily Manhattan. Soon, rumors circulated that the billionaire was back with his ex-wife, who had miraculously survived a near-fatal accident. Paparazzi staked out Tori's apartment and the library, clamoring for a photo or statement. Tori bristled under the unwanted attention, but Christian responded swiftly. He had his legal team issue a formal statement asking the media to respect Tori's privacy, and he deployed extra security to ensure she could go about her daily life without harassment. Not everyone was supportive, however. Alexandra Rothschild summoned Christian for a private luncheon at the family's estate, the same estate that once felt so suffocating to Tori. Over cucumber sandwiches and minted tea, she voiced her objections. "Darling, must you rekindle this fling?" Alexandra asked, her tone dripping with condescension. "We have a certain image to maintain. Everyone was relieved when you parted ways. Now she's come back from the brink and thinks she can just waltz into your life again?" Christian clenched his jaw, anger simmering beneath his calm facade. For years he had allowed his mother's opinions to dominate his decisions, especially regarding Tori. But that was before he witnessed Tori's rebirth, her determination to stand tall against all odds. "Tori isn't some gold digger," he retorted, setting his teacup down a bit too forcefully. "She never wanted my money, you know that. If anything, she just wanted a real marriage, which I failed to give her. She almost died, Mother. Doesn't that warrant a shred of compassion?" Alexandra pursed her lips, clearly unaccustomed to being challenged. "Compassion, yes, but letting her entangle you again? That's a liability. She's an outsider to our world, Christian. Can you imagine what your father would say if he were alive?" Christian stood, smoothing his jacket to mask the tremble of frustration. "My father taught me to value loyalty and love, not appearances. If you can't see Tori for who she really is, that's your loss. I won't make the same mistake twice." He left the estate with renewed resolve. For the first time he realized that defending Tori was not just about loving her, it was about standing up for himself and what he truly believed in. The vow felt liberating yet fraught with consequences. Alexandra was powerful within Manhattan's elite circles, and crossing her could isolate Christian from the support network he had always known. Meanwhile, Tori faced her own familial entanglements. She hadn't been close to her parents, who lived in a small town upstate. When they heard news of her accident and miraculous recovery, they reached out with concern. Her father, Robert Sinclair, was a retired electrician who had always found Christian's wealth intimidating. Her mother, Paula, had tried to mediate, but often sided with Tori's father in viewing Christian as a self-absorbed tycoon. Over a phone call, Tori assured them she was fine and that the doctors expected a full recovery. When the conversation shifted to her renewed contact with Christian, an awkward silence ensued. Finally, Robert spoke, his voice tinged with caution. "Tori, honey, just be careful," he said. "We love you. We don't want to see you hurt again." "I know, Dad," Tori responded softly. "I promise I won't rush into anything." Exiting the phone call, Tori felt torn. Everyone seemed to have opinions about her life, some supportive, some critical. Yet for the first time in years, Tori felt empowered to chart her own course, free from the paralyzing fear of disappointing others. If reconciling with Christian was in her future, it would be on her terms, not dictated by the judgments of those around them. In the weeks that followed, Tori found her life accelerating in unexpected ways. The library board recognized her leadership and offered her a part-time administrative role, which came with better pay and influence over future projects. Tori accepted, mindful of balancing her health regimen with new responsibilities. Her physical therapy sessions became less frequent but still demanding. Each milestone, jogging a quarter mile, ascending a flight of stairs without rest, was a triumph she savored. With every victory, her confidence soared. She discovered a fierce love for her own resilience, something the old Tori never experienced. Christian, on the other hand, faced the daunting task of reshuffling his corporate structure. Whispers within Rothschild Industries suggested that certain board members, influenced by Alexandra, disapproved of Christian's distractions. They questioned whether his renewed involvement with Tori would compromise the company's image or financial objectives. Privately, Christian wondered if it was worth the conflict. He thought about Tori's luminous smile, her unwavering commitment to the library, her readiness to stand up for herself. The more he saw of this radiant, reborn Tori, the more he realized how incomplete his own life felt without her. One evening, he decided to invite Tori to a benefit gala, a smaller, more intimate affair than the grand galas his family usually hosted. This event supported a hospital wing for trauma recovery, a cause close to Tori's heart. When Christian extended the invitation, Tori hesitated. "I'm not sure," she said, biting her lip. Her memories of the last time she attended a Rothschild event were laced with public humiliation. "I don't want to become a spectacle again." Christian placed a gentle hand on her shoulder. "This is different," he assured her. It's a smaller gathering, mostly healthcare donors and patients who benefited from the hospital services. I'll stand by you the entire time, or give you all the space you need. It's your choice." After some thought, Tori agreed, sensing it might be an opportunity to face her fears and see if Christian had truly changed. On the night of the gala, she chose a simple yet elegant navy blue gown. Sarah Lawson helped her with makeup, turning the process into a celebration of Tori's renewed confidence. When Christian arrived to pick her up, Tori almost didn't recognize him. He wore a tailored midnight suit, but the tension that once emanated from him was gone. Instead, he offered a reassuring smile, complimenting her with genuine admiration. The gala venue was a restored art gallery near the Hudson River. Soft jazz played in the background, and the crowd was indeed more subdued. Several attendees recognized Tori from Christian's philanthropic circles, greeting her with warmth and curiosity about her recovery. A few even shared their own stories of medical miracles, forging an instant sense of camaraderie. Christian introduced Tori to Dr. Harriet Sinclair, no relation, the lead physician who oversaw the new trauma unit. The doctor spoke passionately about advanced therapies for accident victims and how philanthropic funds could create life-changing medical breakthroughs. Tori listened intently, remembering her own harrowing journey. Moved, she promised to volunteer her time and share her story to help raise awareness. As the evening progressed, Tori felt something she hadn't felt in a long time: belonging. She wasn't just Christian's ex-wife or a library clerk. She was an individual with her own experiences and the strength to inspire others. Near the end of the night, Christian guided her to a quiet balcony overlooking the water. He looked slightly nervous, an expression Tori rarely saw on him. "Tori," he began, his voice low, "I want you to know I've been doing a lot of soul-searching. Seeing you tonight, how passionate and alive you are, reminds me of everything I took for granted. I can't force you to be with me again, but I hope you'll let me show you how different things can be." Tori's heart pounded in her chest, torn between the echo of old wounds and the undeniable magnetism of this new dynamic. She could hear Sarah's voice in her head, encouraging her to seize happiness if it felt genuine. But she also remembered the humiliations and the heartbreak. "Christian, I'm not the same woman you knew," she said quietly, meeting his gaze. "I need to move at my own pace. If you can respect that, maybe we can see where this goes." He exhaled, relief evident in his eyes. "I'll wait, for as long as it takes." In that moment, Tori felt a glimmer of hope, tinged with caution, but hope nonetheless. The question now was whether this fragile new beginning could withstand the weight of their past and the challenges yet to come. As Tori and Christian navigated their tentative reunion, fate introduced another twist. A man named Gabriel Lawson entered the picture, the younger brother of Tori's friend Sarah. Gabriel was a successful venture capitalist who specialized in funding tech startups. He had a warm, approachable demeanor and a philanthropic streak that rivaled Christian's. Gabriel began visiting the library after hours, consulting with Tori about potential partnerships to modernize libraries across the city. He brought coffee, fresh ideas, and a genuine admiration for Tori's intelligence and determination. Their conversations often stretched late into the evening, filled with animated discussions about digital archives, mobile outreach vans, and the future of public education. Naturally, Christian noticed Gabriel's growing presence in Tori's life. At first, he tried to brush it off as professional collaboration, but when he found them laughing over a private joke at a library fundraiser, a pang of jealousy shot through him. Christian reminded himself to trust Tori, yet the old habit of possessiveness lurked under his polished exterior. Meanwhile, Tori felt conflicted. Gabriel was charming, respectful of her boundaries, and supportive of her goals. She could see a life with him that was free from the baggage of her past. Yet her heart wasn't so easily swayed. There was history between her and Christian, moments of tenderness that still glowed like embers beneath layers of ash. Her transformation after the accident had freed her from a timid existence, but it hadn't erased the love she once felt. One evening, Gabriel invited Tori to a small get-together at a rooftop bar in Soho. It was to celebrate securing a major grant for library improvements. Tori hesitated, but eventually agreed. She reasoned it was purely professional, and besides, Sarah would be there too. Christian found out about the gathering through a mutual acquaintance. In a moment of uncharacteristic insecurity, he decided to go, uninvited. Arriving at the trendy rooftop lounge, Christian spotted Tori immediately. She stood near the bar, a soft laugh escaping her lips as Gabriel told an anecdote. The sight of them together, so comfortable, so at ease, stirred an unwelcome swirl of envy. Before Christian could approach, he was intercepted by a potential investor. He dealt with the conversation politely, eyes flicking back to Tori every few seconds. By the time he managed to free himself, Tori had slipped onto a balcony with Gabriel for some fresh air. Christian followed, stepping out onto the starlit terrace to find them perched against the railing, laughing at the neon skyline. Gabriel had his hand on Tori's shoulder, a gesture of familiarity that made Christian's blood run hot. Tori noticed Christian's entrance, her smile faltering slightly in surprise. "Christian?" she asked, puzzled. "What are you doing here?" He forced a tight-lipped smile, trying to appear casual. "I heard about the event. Thought I'd drop by to congratulate everyone." Gabriel extended a friendly hand. "Christian Rothschild, right? We've crossed paths at a few tech summits. Good to see you again." Christian shook Gabriel's hand, mustering every ounce of civility he could manage. "Likewise," he said through clenched teeth. The atmosphere turned tense. Tori, sensing the testosterone-charged undercurrent, excused herself to grab a drink, leaving the two men behind. As soon as she was out of earshot, Gabriel spoke quietly, his tone courteous but firm. "Look, Christian, I know you two have a complicated history. I respect that. But Tori is an incredible woman, and it's clear she deserves to be with someone who values her for who she is now, not who she used to be." Christian's jaw tightened. "And you think that someone is you?" Gabriel shrugged. "That's up to her to decide. But I'm not stepping aside just because you've realized too late what you lost." Christian bristled. Part of him wanted to retort, to assert his claim on Tori, yet he knew that approach would only drive her away. Instead he took a deep breath, remembering Tori's new independence and how much he admired it. "I won't stand in Tori's way," he said at last, "but I won't give up unless she tells me to." Shortly afterward, Tori returned, oblivious to the tense exchange. She sensed the charged air, but decided not to press the issue. For the rest of the evening, she kept the conversation light, though she couldn't ignore Christian's brooding gaze. A knot of anxiety twisted in her stomach. She knew she had a choice to make, and it wouldn't be fair to leave either man hanging. But how could she be sure she was choosing with her renewed self rather than out of old habits or guilt? In the days following the rooftop event, Tori found herself in an emotional tug-of-war. Christian's unwavering support and heartfelt regret for the past pulled her in one direction, while Gabriel's fresh optimism and respect for her ambitions tugged her in another. Each man represented a different vision of the future, and Tori wasn't entirely sure which path aligned with her newly discovered self. The tension reached a breaking point when Alexandra Rothschild, in a last-ditch effort to control her son's personal life, sent Tori a veiled threat. Enlisting the help of her own lawyers, Alexandra implied that if Tori continued to see Christian, she would find ways to discredit Tori, potentially dredging up her medical records or spinning stories to the press about her fragile mental state. Tori seethed with anger upon receiving the letter. The old Tori would have cowered or hidden the news, too frightened to confront the powerful matriarch. But this Tori confronted Christian that same evening at his penthouse. She stormed in, brandishing the letter. "You need to put a stop to your mother's threats," she said, voice shaking not with fear but with fury. "I will not be bullied again." Christian scanned the letter, his expression darkening. "I had no idea she'd go this far," he muttered, gripping the document so tightly his knuckles turned white. "I'll handle it." Tori stood her ground. "I'm serious, Christian. This has to end, or I'm done. Done with you, with any of this. I refuse to be part of a family that uses fear tactics and manipulation to get its way." Christian closed the gap between them, placing a gentle hand on Tori's shoulder. "I promise you, I will handle it. You have my word." 2 days later, Christian confronted Alexandra in the grand salon of the Rothschild estate. With stoic resolve, he laid out a clear ultimatum. She was to cease all hostility toward Tori and publicly apologize for any distress caused or risk being removed from the company's board and from Christian's personal life altogether. Alexandra's icy composure cracked. She was unaccustomed to her son's defiance. "You would choose her over your own mother?" she asked, voice trembling with a mix of anger and hurt. Christian refused to waver. "I choose what's right. If you can't respect the woman He paused, inhaling sharply. "The woman I love, then I won't stand by you. I may be your son, but I'm also an adult who can decide whom I want in my life." Her eyes blazed with indignation, but faced with losing her influence over both Christian and the family empire, Alexandra begrudgingly agreed to back down. A carefully worded statement was drafted by Christian's PR team, clarifying that any rumors of conflict regarding Tori were baseless. It wasn't exactly a heartfelt apology, but it was enough for Tori to breathe easier. At the same time, Tori wrestled with Gabriel's increasing affection. He had started sending her thoughtful gifts, a first edition of her favorite classic novel, a gourmet meal prepared by a Michelin star chef, invitations to exclusive art exhibits. Unlike Christian's mother, who had tried to undermine Tori, Gabriel wanted to uplift her, to celebrate her new confidence without overshadowing it. One weekend, he invited Tori to a charity event in the Hamptons. They strolled along the beach, discussing the expansion of public libraries in underprivileged neighborhoods. The synergy between them was undeniable, and Gabriel eventually confessed that he was falling in love with her. Tori was flattered, even tempted, but she couldn't shake the memory of Christian's determined face, his vow to defend her against his own mother. She realized that while Gabriel was practically perfect on paper, her heart was still tethered to Christian in a way she couldn't easily ignore. Torn by conflicting emotions, Tori returned home that evening to her modest apartment in Queens, only to find an envelope slipped beneath her door. Inside was a handwritten note from Christian, short but heartfelt. "No matter what you decide, I will always be grateful you survived and found your voice. Thank you for teaching me what love should be." Tori sank onto her couch, tears blurring her vision. She was at a crossroads. On one side was Christian, the man she had once loved deeply, who now seemed ready to sacrifice everything for her. On the other was Gabriel, a kindred spirit whose attentions offered a fresh start. One thing was certain, she couldn't drift between them indefinitely. A choice had to be made. As autumn leaves began to fall across the city, Tori felt the weight of her dilemma intensify. She continued to juggle her library responsibilities, physical therapy, and the delicate tightrope walk between Christian and Gabriel. Her friend Sarah offered advice without taking sides, reminding Tori that she needed to follow her heart, wherever it led. In a moment of desperation, Tori took a weekend trip alone to a small lakeside cabin owned by Elizabeth Graham's family. Set deep in the Adirondacks, it was a place free from city noise, paparazzi, and emotional entanglements. She needed solitude to think. The first day was spent simply resting. Tori woke to the sound of rustling pines and the scent of wood smoke in the crisp air. She brewed coffee on an old-fashioned stovetop and sat on the porch, absorbing the stillness. By midday, she felt a calm she hadn't experienced in months. Memories drifted through her mind like scenes from a movie. She recalled her timid life before the accident, always deferring, always accommodating. She had once loved Christian with a purity that overshadowed his flaws, hoping her devotion would be enough to sustain the marriage. It hadn't been. She also thought of Gabriel's kindness and open-hearted admiration, the sense of possibility he represented. Yet something about her connection with Christian was undeniable, woven into her very being. That night, Tori lit a small fire in the cabin's fireplace and allowed herself to examine her feelings honestly. She wrote in a journal, listing the qualities she valued in both men, reminding herself that her newfound strength was not about pleasing anyone, but rather being true to herself. Around midnight, she reached a moment of clarity. It came as a sudden flood of insight. She realized that her bond with Christian went far beyond mere history. They had hurt each other, disappointed each other, but she saw in him a genuine desire to grow. He had shown a willingness to put her needs first, to defend her against even his own mother, and to respect her autonomy. In contrast, Gabriel was a safe harbor, offering a blank slate free from old scars. But Tori recognized that what she felt for him wasn't the same intensity or depth. It was appreciation, gratitude, perhaps even affection, but it wasn't love in the truest sense. The next morning, Tori woke before sunrise, took one last walk along the lake's edge, and made her way back to the city. She knew the path she needed to follow, no matter how risky, no matter how many obstacles might remain. Upon returning to New York, Tori contacted Christian first. She requested a quiet dinner at her apartment, deliberately bypassing the opulence of his penthouse or any fancy restaurant. She wanted this conversation to be rooted in the real world they both inhabited now. Christian arrived carrying takeout from a local Thai place. The aroma of spicy basil chicken and jasmine rice filled Tori's cozy living room. They sat cross-legged on the floor, plates balanced on their laps, exchanging small smiles. Halfway through the meal, Tori set her plate aside and took a deep breath. "Christian, I've made my decision." He looked up, tension evident in his posture. "I'm listening." She reached for his hand, an intimate gesture that signaled her seriousness. "I won't lie to you. I was drawn to Gabriel. He's a good man. But my heart belongs to you. It always has, even when I was furious or hurt. I see how hard you've worked to change, to respect me, and I can't ignore that." Relief washed over Christian's face, and he exhaled shakily. "Tori, I promise I'll spend every day proving I'm worthy of your trust. I won't repeat the mistakes of the past." They talked late into the night, discussing boundaries, fears, and aspirations. Tori emphasized that she needed space to maintain her own identity. She wouldn't quit her job, nor would she be paraded around as a trophy spouse at corporate events. Christian readily agreed, insisting he wanted her to shine in her own right. The next day, Tori met Gabriel for lunch, determined to be honest and kind. They found a quiet corner at a midtown cafe, the hum of traffic filtering through the windows. Tori explained her decision, her voice soft but resolute. Gabriel listened with stoic grace, though hurt flickered in his eyes. "I won't pretend I'm not disappointed," he admitted, fiddling with the rim of his coffee cup. "But I respect your choice. You deserve happiness, Tori." She squeezed his hand across the table. "Thank you. You've been an incredible friend, and I hope we can keep it that way." Gabriel nodded. "I'd like that." Despite the pang of guilt she felt, Tori also felt relief at having finally chosen her path. She sent Sarah a quick text, updating her on the situation. Sarah responded with a supportive message, reminding Tori that Gabriel would bounce back. He was resilient in his own right, and above all, they were still family. Later that evening, Tori and Christian reunited for a simple date, a stroll through Central Park at twilight. It was reminiscent of their early courtship, minus the emotional baggage and silent tension that once plagued them. The city lights glimmered in the distance, and the gentle rustle of leaves provided a soothing backdrop. They stopped at a quaint pond beneath a weeping willow, the same spot where they once had a picnic years ago. Christian turned to Tori, carefully tucking a strand of hair behind her ear. "This time," he said softly, "I vow to do it right. Whatever pace you need, whatever boundaries you set, I'll respect them. I just want the chance to build something real with you." Tori felt tears prick at her eyes. She thought of all the battles she had fought, both within herself and against external forces, and knew she was ready. Ready to love him, but also ready to love herself. "Yes," she whispered, leaning against him, letting the soft glow of the city envelop them both. In the weeks that followed, Tori and Christian embarked on what felt like a brand new relationship. They took things slowly, despite the swirl of media attention that inevitably followed. Christian's mother receded into the background, begrudgingly complying with the boundaries Christian had set. To demonstrate their commitment as equals, Christian invited Tori to co-manage a philanthropic project focusing on public libraries and trauma rehabilitation, two causes that mirrored their shared journey. The project aimed to establish mobile libraries in underserved areas while offering counseling and therapy services for those recovering from accidents and injuries. Tori was initially hesitant, unsure if she wanted to mix romance and work again, but Christian assured her that she would have full autonomy, and any decisions would be made in partnership with the organizations involved, not at his unilateral whim. Intrigued and inspired, Tori agreed, quickly immersing herself in the project's logistics. She scouted neighborhoods in need, connected with local volunteers, and leveraged her library contacts to secure resources. As they collaborated, Tori observed Christian's growth firsthand. He showed patience in meetings, listening rather than dominating discussions. He also took care to credit her contributions, ensuring she received recognition for her efforts. Slowly but surely, they built a program that resonated with both of their deepest values. When the grand opening of the first mobile library was announced, Christian insisted on a low-key ceremony. He wanted the focus on the community rather than himself. Tori beamed with pride as she watched local children line up to check out books from the bright, newly outfitted bus. A small medical tent nearby offered physical therapy consultations, a symbolic nod to Tori's incredible recovery. In a quiet moment, Christian took Tori aside, away from the cameras. "Thank you," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "I've never felt more fulfilled in my life than I do right now." Tori slipped her hand into his, smiling. "We did this together. That's what makes it feel so meaningful." After the ceremony, they headed back to Tori's apartment, where Elizabeth Graham and Sarah Lawson had organized a modest celebration. Gabriel even stopped by briefly, offering a friendly hug to Tori and a cordial handshake to Christian. The tension from before had eased into mutual respect. Late that night, when the guests had gone, Tori and Christian sat on her small balcony, sharing a bottle of wine under the city's starless sky. Tori had her legs tucked beneath her, wearing a comfortable sweater instead of any designer gown. Christian loosened his tie, leaning back in a patio chair that was far from luxurious, but felt strangely perfect. "Do you remember," Tori began, "the day we met at that charity auction? You looked so out of place in that stiff tuxedo. I thought you were bored out of your mind." Christian chuckled. "I was, until I saw you sneaking away with a plate of canapes, trying to feed stray cats in the alley." Tori laughed, recalling the memory. Those poor cats seemed hungrier than the wealthy donors inside. A peaceful silence settled between them, the sort of silence that felt comforting rather than awkward. Tori gazed at Christian, noticing the soft lines around his eyes, the humility in his posture. She thought of her accident, her rebirth, and the drastic changes that had led them back to each other. Christian leaned forward, his expression earnest. "Tori, I know we've barely begun to truly know each other in this new way, but everything feels right for the first time in my life. I can't see a future that doesn't have you in it." She laced her fingers with his. "That's the difference this time. We're building something real, not just a facade for society pages or a forced marriage to appease your family. If we do this, it's on our terms." He nodded, eyes alight with conviction. "On our terms. For us." Their lips met in a gentle kiss, the city's hustle far below them. In that intimate moment, Tori felt the weight of the past lifting, replaced by the promise of a shared tomorrow. 6 months later, Tori and Christian stood together in a sunlit rose garden on the outskirts of Manhattan. It was the same historic chapel where they'd exchanged vows years ago, but this ceremony was entirely different. The guest list was small: Tori's parents, Sarah and Gabriel, Elizabeth Graham, and a few close friends. Even Alexandra Rothschild made a quiet appearance, her presence a tentative olive branch. Tori wore a simple ivory gown, her hair crowned with fresh wildflowers. Christian opted for a tailored suit in a softer hue, a reflection of his mellowed spirit. There were no paparazzi, no journalists, just the sound of birdsong and the soft hush of a breeze through the rose bushes. They renewed their vows, each one a testament to the growth and resilience they'd discovered in themselves and each other. Tori spoke of her rebirth, her journey from timid housewife to confident partner, and how Christian's genuine transformation showed her that people can indeed learn from their mistakes. Christian, voice trembling with emotion, promised to protect her independence, honor her spirit, and cherish every day they had together. When the officiant pronounced them as husband and wife again, applause broke out among the small gathering. Sarah dabbed at her eyes, Elizabeth let out a joyful holler, and even Alexandra managed a dignified smile. The couple shared a kiss that felt like the sealing of a covenant, a pledge to build upon the ashes of the past rather than be defined by it. In the months and years that followed, Tori and Christian continued to expand their philanthropic initiatives, forging alliances that revitalized libraries and medical facilities across the nation. They traveled not for high-stakes business deals or lavish vacations, but to immerse themselves in new cultures and charitable endeavors. Tori also pursued her own passions, penning a memoir about her journey, an honest recounting of heartbreak, recovery, and renewal that became a bestseller. Their home, no longer the imposing penthouse that once echoed with loneliness, was a warm space filled with books, rescued pets, and the laughter of friends. They hosted intimate dinner parties rather than extravagant galas, valuing real connections over superficial grandeur. Their relationship stood as a testament to the belief that love, though fragile, could be reborn more potent and beautiful than before. On the second anniversary of Tori's recovery, Christian planned a small surprise: a vow renewal trip to the Adirondack cabin that had once helped Tori find clarity. Standing on the shore of the same tranquil lake, they held hands as the sun rose, quietly reaffirming their unspoken promise to grow old together, anchored by respect, understanding, and a love that had survived against all odds. From a broken marriage overshadowed by misunderstandings and ambition to a miraculous recovery that sparked rebirth, Tori and Christian's journey exemplifies how true love can flourish even after life's darkest twists. Tori's harrowing accident shook her to her core, unleashing a resilience she never realized she possessed. Christian's remorse opened his eyes to the devotion he'd once taken for granted. But their reconciliation wasn't a simple fairy tale. It was a deliberate choice, each deciding to grow, to forgive, and to stand united against judgment and fear. Their story reminds us that sometimes a near loss can illuminate life's deepest truths. Love is not about control or appearances, but mutual respect and unwavering support. If you found Tori and Christian's journey as moving as we did, please like this video, share it to inspire others, and subscribe to our channel for more heartwarming stories of hope and second chances.